Excellency, Director General of UNESCO, Irina Bokova, former President of Iceland and UNESCO's Goodwill Ambassador for Languages, Vigdís Finnbogadóttir, Ambassador Berglind Ásgeirsdóttir, Permanent Delegate of Iceland to UNESCO. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to welcome you here this afternoon on behalf of the University of Iceland. And I'd especially like to extend a warm welcome to our guest of honor, Madam Irina Bokova, and to say what a distinct privilege it is to have you here and to have the opportunity of listening to you speak on issues of fascination, language and knowledge. People in Iceland tend to have a fairly strong sense of the importance of language and its impact on culture and cross-cultural understanding, probably due to the size and location of our country, as well as our cultural history. Here at the University of Iceland, a total number of 13 languages, apart from Icelandic, are taught. And we are very honored to have the Vigdís Finnbogadóttir Institute of Foreign Languages within the university as a venue for teaching and research in the languages. We hope to start construction of a new building on campus just across the street later this year, which will host the institute and also the Vigdís International Center for Multilingualism and Intercultural Understanding. And the center has received certification under the auspices of UNESCO as a Category 2 center. And this will make a tremendous difference for the profile of the center. And I'd like to thank you, Madam Bokova, for this very much appreciated recognition. I'd also like to thank you for taking time to address the conference on language resources and evaluation, which is being held in Reykjavik, under the patronage of UNESCO. And this conference and the issues addressed there, innovation in research and development, policy issues related to technology and language, these are all issues of immense importance to us at the university, as well as our partners which have organized the conference. So thank you for that. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce our distinguished speaker briefly. Irina Bokova was born in Bulgaria in the capital city of Sofia. She graduated from the Moscow State Institute of International Relations and then proceeded to study in the United States at the University of Maryland and the John F. Kennedy School of Government at Harvard. Madam Bokova joined the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Bulgaria in 1977. She was appointed to the permanent mission of Bulgaria to the United Nations and was also a member of the Bulgarian delegation at the UN conferences on the equality of women in Copenhagen, 1980, Nairobi, 1985, and Beijing, 1995. And as Member of Parliament, she participated in the drafting of Bulgaria's new constitution. Irina Bokova was Minister for Foreign Affairs in Bulgaria and coordinator of Bulgaria-European Union relations and ambassador of Bulgaria to France, Monaco, and UNESCO during the years 2005 to 2009. She was also personal representative of the President of Bulgaria to the Organisation Internationale de la Francophonie, and in all her roles, Madame Bokova has advocated adamantly for European integration. She was a founding member of the European Policy Forum and has worked to overcome European division and to foster the values of dialogue, diversity, human dignity, and human rights. Irina Bokova was elected in 2009 as the first woman to head the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, and was re-elected for a second term in 2013. As Director General, Madame Bokova is actively engaged in international efforts to advance quality education for all, gender equality, cultural dialogue, and scientific cooperation for sustainable development. She is Executive Secretary of the Steering Committee of the UN Secretary General's Global Education First Initiative and co-vice chair of the Broadband Commission. In addition to all her other achievements, Madame Bokova speaks 5 languages. In addition to her own mother tongue, she speaks English, French, Spanish, and Russian. So, Madame Bokova, it's a great pleasure to welcome you to the podium to present your lecture, From Language to Knowledge, How to Mobilize Our Ultimate Renewable Resource. Please take the floor.
Madam President of the Governing Council, thank you for this very kind presentation. Madam Ambassador, dear Vigdis, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, dear students, it is indeed a pleasure to be here to visit the University of Iceland. And thank you once again, you were very generous with me. I do believe that what I have seen and what I know about Iceland very much embodies the values which are at the heart of UNESCO, what UNESCO stands for. It is the deep belief in the ultimate power of human ingenuity. It is a belief in the power of culture, and in this particular case, in languages, to bring people together. Your country, which is known as a book-loving country, as your Nobel Prize laureate Halldór Laxness named it once, is a wellspring of creativity. From cinema to contemporary art, from software design to crime fiction, with a dense network of movie theaters, libraries, and a dynamic publishing and media industry. And maybe nowhere in the world is the passion for literature and book publishing more vibrant than here, in Reykjavik, which UNESCO nominated as our creative city for literature. In less than a generation, Iceland has moved from a nation of farmers and fishermen, as your president once put it, into a showcase of innovation in software, computers, design, and ecotourism. And this particular vision builds on a sacrosanct commitment to the protection of your culture and of your language. There are very few countries in the world where people can read stories and founding sagas or eddas written some 700 years ago without need for translation. It is not by chance that we decided to create a UNESCO Center for Multilingualism and Intercultural Understanding here in Reykjavik. And this agreement, establishing the Vigdis International Center, was signed last year at UNESCO in the presence of a very respected, I would say, personality and goodwill ambassador, Ms. Vigdis Finnbogadóttir. At a time when many countries are looking for ways to combine tradition and modernity, the experience of Iceland is telling. Maybe the most striking evidence of this cultural vitality is the great Harpa Center that I had the privilege of visiting this morning, which is a beacon of creativity, dialogue, and innovation that received also the European Union Prize for Contemporary Architecture only last year. I know there was a debate during the banking crisis on whether to stop its construction. Moving forward was, in my view, the right decision, a vote of confidence in the future, and I would say a different future. And all this resonates deeply with the mandate of UNESCO and with our vision of how to build peace and sustainable development. UNESCO was created upon a simple idea, but a very courageous idea at those times. Peace, or a development model based exclusively upon political and economic arrangements, cannot secure the unanimous, lasting, and sincere support of people, and therefore it must be founded if it is not to fail upon the intellectual and moral solidarity of humankind, upon the people. And today, in an age of limits, limits of our resources, limits of our planet, we speak about the boundaries of our planet, we must make the most of our ultimate renewable energy, that of the human mind. This is the soft power UNESCO stands for within the United Nations system. This is the route Iceland followed after the banking collapse in 2008, making the choice to strengthen democracy, to transform financial institutions, to draft a new constitution through an open source public process. Iceland, birthplace of the oldest parliament in the world, the Althing, is possibly the place to invade new democratic forms for the future. And yesterday I was very privileged also to see the place where the first convening of the elders was made in 930, if my memory serves me well. The story of resilience, your story of resilience, reminds us that sustainability has deeper roots than economic assets. Sustainability is about human well-being, about human dignity and human rights. It is about learning to live together in our diversity, to respond to the aspirations and expectations of young people. For decades, development was measured first and foremost by economic indicators. In the late 1980s, human development began to be assessed with a different set of indicators, including life expectancy, educational attainment, and human rights. In 2010, the Nobel Prize economists Joseph Stiglitz and Amartya Sen issued a landmark report entitled Mismeasuring Our Lives, where they said, if we have the wrong metrics, we will strive for the wrong things. In the quest to increase GDP, we may end up with a society in which citizens are worse off. And I'm convinced we need to renew our thinking on development paradigms. Today, with less than 600 days to the target date for the achievement of the Millennium Development Goals, which are adopted in 2000, and also, which is very important, as we shape a new global development agenda to follow, an agenda that our ambition at the United Nations says that this must be a universal agenda for all. It is all the more important in our increasingly interconnected, globalized, but also quite vulnerable world. From Syria to Mali and Nigeria, we are witnessing the tragedy of extremism, of attacks against civilians, against education and culture, against girls wanting to go to school. UNESCO's response starts on the benches of school. Education is a human right, and it is a driver of sustainable development. This vision guides the Global Education for All campaign that UNESCO leads. There has been a tremendous progress, and we have to be happy about it, but we are still far off track. 250 million children are not acquiring basic skills, even after years in school, because of the poor quality of education. Girls and women are hit hardest. Out of 57 million kids not going to school, 31 million girls are out of these institutions. And girls' education is increasingly under attack, as we have seen many times in Afghanistan and Pakistan and lately in Nigeria. Women still represent 2/3 of the world's 774 million illiterate adults. And we firmly believe that lasting peace and security cannot be built on inequality and exclusion. We must strengthen education and act where needs are most acute. This is what UNESCO is doing in Afghanistan, reaching 600,000 women and men through the country's largest ever literacy program. This is what we are doing through the Malala Fund for Girls' Right to Education that I launched this last February with the government of Pakistan in Islamabad. And this is why also we launched with the Secretary General, Ban Ki-moon, and at that time the Secretary of State, Hillary Rodham Clinton, the Global Partnership on Girls and Women's Education. We did that in 2011, working with major private sector companies. With Procter & Gamble, for instance, we are leading a girls and women's literacy project in Senegal, targeting 40,000 young women. In Ethiopia and Tanzania, we are supporting girls in the transition to secondary education, working with the Packard Foundation. And quality education, also, ladies and gentlemen, is very much linked to protection and promotion of our linguistic and cultural diversity. Our diversity is an open-air laboratory for creativity and innovation, for generating new ideas and driving positive social change. Whereas material resources and the factory model were the motor of expansion in the Industrial Revolution, the advent of the information age has radically transformed our societies and economies, making brain power, knowledge, creativity, and innovation the drivers of 21st century wealth. Just a few months ago, UNESCO published with the United Nations Development Programme the United Nations Report on the Creative Economy. This report shows that in 10 years, world trade in creative goods and services has more than doubled to reach $624 billion. Countries like China are investing on the creative economy as a key driver of a more sustainable development. In India, the cinema, the film industry, is just as strategic as steel. In Indonesia, creative industries already represent 10% of the gross domestic product. A new creative economy is emerging on a global scale, with double-digit growth rates in South Africa, in Africa, and Asia. In South America, Africa, and Asia. Nations are realizing more and more that cultural goods and services represent millions of jobs, generate high revenue, while also being a source of identity and collective strength. We need to build the right capacities and the right policies to protect and promote this potential. This is the role of UNESCO, notably through our 7 cultural conventions, including on the protection and promotion of the diversity of cultural expressions. The same is true also for scientific cooperation. We need more integrated sciences, drawing on the full range of scientific, traditional, and indigenous knowledge, including the social and human sciences. This is the purpose of UNESCO scientific programs on water, on the ocean, on biodiversity, with our Biosphere Reserve Network that is covering a very large part of our member states. We need also more connected science, science that is linked to policy making, that responds to the needs of societies. This is one of the purposes of the United Nations Secretary General's Scientific Advisory Board that Mr. Ban Ki-moon conferred to us, to UNESCO. Iceland has shown that it is possible to move from a coal and oil-dependent economy to a clean energy-based ecosystem in urban heating and electricity production. And this was possible because of political choices, because of schools and universities like this one that have trained people and provided them with the right skills to manage change. And as we say at UNESCO, fundamentally, these choices are rooted in a shared understanding of our interconnectedness. No single country nowadays can build sustainable human development alone, nor can sustainability only be a matter for governments. Sustainable development is about sustainable relationships among cultures with the environment in the interest of present and future generations. And I can hardly think of a better place than Iceland to understand the geological and environmental connections that we depend upon, from the depth of the ocean to the sky, as we have seen with the volcanic eruptions in 2010 and 2011 and their impact on Europe. Icelandic glaciers are the largest in Europe. Our weather, our climate, our crops and our cities are dependent in one way or another on what happens to the ice. This calls for deeper international scientific collaboration and knowledge sharing to an extent we could have never imagined before. Together, UNESCO and Iceland have published a landmark report on climate change and Arctic sustainable development that we presented to the Rio Plus 20 conference 2 years ago. The island of Surtsey, formed by volcanic eruptions in the 60s, has been inscribed on UNESCO's World Heritage List and legally protected from its, so to say, birth. It's our child. We consider it to be our baby. It provides the world with a pristine natural laboratory, free from human interference, producing long-term information on the colonization process of new land by plant and animal life. And this is also the importance of UNESCO Geoparks in Iceland, like the Katla Geopark. We are keeping close watch on the transnational nomination project of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge to the World Heritage List, potentially involving Brazil, Norway, Portugal, and the United Kingdom. It reminds me also of the words of a Saudi Arabian cosmonaut, the Prince Sultan bin Salman Al Saud, after his experience on board the space shuttle Discovery, when he said, "The first day or so, we are all pointed to our countries. The third or fourth day, we were pointing to our continents. By the fifth day, we were aware of only one Earth." So, ladies and gentlemen, we need to develop this one Earth approach. For too long, we have been trained to cut and slice our reality in academic disciplines, to separate fields of knowledge, and this might be, to some extent, the legacy of the Cartesian approach that has accelerated scientific progress immensely, but it does not always help us to understand the environmental connections and cultural dynamics at work in today's world. As your Nobel Prize laureate Halldór Laxness said in his acceptance speech, "It is sometimes hard to distinguish in our minds and thoughts those that are the expression of our own self and those that are the voices of our friends within us." Because I believe our identities are multiple and complex. Never have we been more connected. Never have we had such access to knowledge. New technologies are knitting societies more tightly together. Contemporary artists are opening our eyes to this new reality. And I'm thinking, of course, of Eero, born in Ólafsvík, who invented his artist name after a visit to Castel del Ferro in Spain, worked in Italy and France, and rediscovered the art of American comic books, whose exhibition, I would say fascinating scenes, are currently on show at UNESCO and continues to inspire our imagination. And it is also clear in the work of Ólafur Eliasson, who grew up in the city of Holbeck, moved on to Berlin, redefining contemporary art and influencing the global artistic scene. With greater contact between people has come also heightened fear. Fear from vulnerable communities who sense they stand to lose from globalization. Culture has moved to the front line of national and international politics as languages, traditions, identities are facing the pressures of erosion and sometimes of disappearance. We need to develop a new cultural literacy, one that gives the key to living together in this world of diversity. We might call it a high-tech vision of languages and linguistic diversity to help tackle our multiple identities and complex affiliations. This is the task suggested by Haldor Laxness. Anyone who doesn't know others doesn't know himself. What a wonderful, I think, motto also of our UNESCO work on cultural diversity. So by encouraging the inscription of cross-border cultural and natural sites on the World Heritage List, such as the Viking Age sites in Northern Europe, in collaboration with Denmark, Germany, Latvia, and Norway, currently under examination, I think Iceland has shown leadership in a message that heritage is a shared common good. By supporting policies to revitalize languages and advocating for multilingual education or education in the mother tongue, UNESCO aims to promote mutual understanding, respect, and at the end of the day, of human dignity. In Latin America, UNESCO supports the intercultural bilingual education approach to improve the quality of learning. In the Asia-Pacific, we support the adoption of mother tongue-based multilingual education to boost social cohesion and social inclusion. All the linguistic tools and programs we have launched, like the World Atlas on Endangered Languages, which is online, our open education resources on indigenous languages, the International Mother Tongue Language Day, created in 2006, which VIGD has also supported so strongly that we created, we are very grateful for that, are guided by the same vision, to make the most of our linguistic diversity as a way to enrich, to strengthen our collective ability to think, to relay, to know, to understand. Our latest publication on reading in the mobile era revealed that the affordable mobile devices can significantly promote mobile reading in local languages, overcome language barriers to the literacy education, and the dissemination of multilingual content. We are a long way from harnessing the wealth of knowledge held by indigenous people across the globe on their way to manage water and forests, to live sustainably. To access this knowledge, we need to learn and disseminate their languages, and this is one of the reasons why UNESCO and Iceland have decided to establish the Victis International Center for Multilingualism and International Understanding that is hosted by this university. This center aims to become a leading institution on multilingualism and will strengthen Iceland's leadership on the promotion of cultural diversity. This is important for Iceland, but it is equally important for UNESCO. More than half the world's population is estimated to be fluent in at least 2 languages, and the most multilingual populations often live in some of the poorest parts of the developing world. Languages represent the very fabric of cultural diversity. They are carriers of identity, knowledge, values, and worldviews. The very grammar of different languages reflects distinctive mindsets. In many languages, statements often begin with I, the subject. In the language of America's indigenous Mohegans, they always begin with you, even when the speaker is the subject. This speaks of a different approach to the self and the other. Minority languages face tremendous pressures and are targets of discrimination, either because they are not official languages or because they are not used in schools or by the media. Today, less than a quarter of the world's existing languages are used in schools and on the internet. Half of the spoken languages in the world could disappear within the next generation. Yet, each language has its own unique way of interpreting the world. A proverb of Marovo, I cited this example this morning because I think it's telling, which is a language of the Solomon Islands. This is the largest freshwater lagoon in the world, says, "Those who cannot name the good things of sea and land cannot find them, and therefore eat or otherwise benefit from them, nor will they know how to look after them well." Each of the 6,000 or so languages spoken in the world is a unique repository of knowledge. Let me provide you with another example, also very dear to me. The Central American tropical rainforest along the border between Nicaragua and Honduras has been the home of the indigenous Mayanga people for centuries. The area also is the second largest rainforest in the Americas after the Amazon, and is of utmost importance for the conservation of Central American biodiversity, but I would say also of biodiversity worldwide. Through their livelihoods based on agriculture, fishing and hunting, the indigenous people have both shaped the local ecological system and sheltered it from destruction. And we at UNESCO have worked with them and collated their knowledge about the local flora and fauna into the first book written in the Mayangna language. This is a project which testifies to a deep belief. We had a project I visited last year when I was in Central America, when we say that the cultural diversity for humanity is like biodiversity for nature. And I think combining the indigenous knowledge also in such particular biosphere reserve is extremely important if we want to have to take up the most of the indigenous knowledge and to put it to work for the protection of the nature. And a report published in 2009 by the British Academy concluded that Britain's competitive edge in academic research was being undermined by the linguistic poverty of the country's overwhelmingly monolingual researchers in the arts and humanities, unable to tap into the wealth of resources in other languages. This, I believe, also, the loss of languages is a loss of knowledge and talent that we cannot afford anymore. We need to bring it back together. We need to protect and to preserve it. In order to do that, we need more tools, more networks. We need to promote linguistic diversity and speak out in many languages, but speak with one voice. This is why UNESCO has developed an indicator of linguistic diversity, which is integrated within the set of biodiversity indicators. I think this is an extraordinary contribution to this notion of the link between biodiversity and linguistic diversity. And I believe this is also the purpose of the UNESCO Vigdis International Center of Languages. We strongly support and believe in it because we need advanced research on culture and languages, just as we have advanced research in the sciences. So, ladies and gentlemen, to conclude my presentation, let me just once again say that Iceland has proved on many occasions that in our world of diversity, respect of our identity and language is not the opposite of openness. It is the way in which we can join forces to engage in a more authentic, interesting, engaging, inclusive, and peaceful dialogue. And this message resonates very deeply with UNESCO's convictions. It is a call to make the most of our ultimate renewable energy that I mentioned at the beginning of my speech, to forge a new humanism for peace and sustainable development in the 21st century. So thank you for your attention.